you, no funny stuff, all right? I will gong you out of here. I don't have a gong yet.
All right, almost lunchtime. Hang in there. So yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about really how to approach data-driven marketing, and especially if you are operating with a small team, some of the complications around what you need to do around sort of getting sort of those marketing tactics flowing through things. I'm Kobe, I'm with Excel Partners. Spent a lot of time focusing on investing in marketing technology, and also was a CMO in my past life. And I'll kind of have guys spend a little time sort of backgrounds and about your company, and we'll kind of dive right in.
Sure. I'm Dominique Levine. I'm a CMO at AgilOne. So at AgilOne, we are helping brands of all sizes implement data-driven marketing, specifically advanced data science, predictive analytics, but for day-to-day campaigns, try and make that very easy. So our customers range from larger brands like Sports Authority and Body Shop, all the way down to smaller family-owned businesses like Nuts.com or A-Main Hobbies and so forth. So a lot of it is more consumer-oriented brands, but obviously the concepts we'll talk about are more broadly applicable as well.
Good morning. I'm George Shahada, VP of Customer Relationship Management at Shaklee. Shaklee's a natural nutrition company. I joined about 9 months ago. Shaklee's been in business for probably about 60 years, but relatively new to the whole kind of digital marketing, data-driven marketing era. So my job primarily is to reach out to consumers and get them to purchase more product, where primarily our distribution model has been through independent distributors. Now we're trying to go direct to consumers and help supplement a lot of that revenue. So I'm joined and partnering with AgilOne to go ahead and try to drive that.
So George, Shaklee's been around for 60 years, you said. Like, why do you care about data-driven marketing? What does it mean to you? I mean, some of those vendors talk about predictive analytics. I'm sure it may be confusing. Maybe talk a little bit about how you approach that, and especially given the resources you have.
Sure. I think in simple terms, and we all know this, I think, but in simple terms, it's taking the information you have to make a message more relevant. Good for the customer. The good part for us is hopefully they buy more. So that's kind of what it is for us. I think with Shaklee, we've gathered data on customers, like I mentioned, over the last 50 plus years. And as kind of we've looked at our business model, we've pretty much learned that a lot of distributors come and go, a lot of customers aren't as serviced as well over time. We can get, even just with some little effort, probably drive about 5% growth just in that consumer revenue, using a lot of resources that were already sort of created within the organization. So sort of my approach coming into this has been, let's look at all of the assets we've created to really help the distributors sell our products, and then let's look at the data that we have to really reach out to them, primarily through email, but we're doing a lot more through some personalized advertising and trying to build some other like affiliate type programs out there to get more in touch with customers directly.
So what kind of data at AgilOne you guys need to tap into? Like, what's important, do you feel like, to really sort of create that more sort of personalized experience for the end consumer? And how do you go about sort of tapping into all that data?
Right. So like George said, I mean, the amazing thing is that most companies, even if they've not been in business for 60 years, have an incredible amount of information, about their customers. And that ranges from, the products that these customers have bought, at what price point and through what channel, how often have they visited the website, what did they look at while they were at the website, which emails did they open and which emails did they not open, how often did they call into the call center, service center, and there's like our digital footprint, right, that we all leave out there. I think the big problem is that it's very difficult for marketers to tap into that data, and I talk to marketers every day. I spoke to the head of kind of email marketing for brides from Macy's up here in San Francisco. And of course, brides give an enormous amount of information about themselves as they register on the Macy's site. But she's fundamentally unable to use any of that information to trigger campaigns on a day-to-day basis. So I think that's really the big problem. I mean, there is all that data, but how do you make it actionable? And there's a lot of money kind of right under your nose, both, as George said, delighting customers with experiences that are better for them, but thereby also, getting more of their value, for your brand.
So part of how I view sort of the opportunity is around sort of making the data actionable, but a lot of it's also collecting all that data. Yeah. So you mentioned a lot of sort of sources that honestly are living in all these silos. And part of what we need to do is create a 360-degree view of our customer for which we then know what to actually present them. So one, did you think about it this way? And if so, like, how did you even approach that?
Yeah, I should say kind of, my strategy coming into it was, we needed to get some quick wins. I mean, our data, thankfully, has been organized pretty well. I think what AgilOne enabled us to do was essentially organize it in a more effective way to do some intelligent marketing. And we kind of had your traditional kind of, orders and customers, all that kind of stuff organized pretty well. The kind of first step was to use that data and do some of just the bare bones type of things, like automate, cart abandonment and replenishment and reactivation campaigns. Something that we were able to leverage AgilOne just to get off the ground quickly. I don't think it was necessarily like revolutionary predictive analytics. It was pretty much just pick the low-hanging fruit and then get that piece out of the way. The part we started to shift more towards around the predictive side was, I'll give you a very clear example. We've created tons of videos and brochures and everything, and sometimes I feel like I'm kind of rummaging through a thrift store, kind of picking off items and seeing how I can kind of repurpose them for various things. One example of that is we created a whole weight management program, and we had all these client testimonials and all these different videos and so forth. And we tried to figure out, okay, well, our typical approach has been batch and blast. Let's go do a big weight management program in March, right before swimsuit season, blah, blah, blah. So we did that, and that was fine. We got some revenue. But then we realized, well, there's a lot more information we could put out there. Instead of bombarding all the customers with that message, let's go use AgilOne and figure out who is probably most receptive to that weight loss communication. And then let's start to drip over this kind of testimonial series over time. And I don't know if it was surprisingly, but we just through that effort, there were really no unsubscribes, but we generated probably about a 3 times lift in just the revenue, just by doing something simple as repurposing content towards an audience that seems most receptive to it. And that was used by some of the kind of out-of-the-box predictive product clusters that AgilOne had.
Got it. Maybe you could talk a little about, like, what are some other interesting things that some of the AgilOne customers are doing that maybe take that concept to the next level? Like, how can we crank up the juice on that?
Yeah, totally. No, definitely. So yeah, usually, like George said, you start with kind of quick wins and then really layer the predictive models into it. So maybe a customer I can talk to is Mavi Jeans. They're a very large, well-known jeans brand. A lot of celebrities wear it. They're originally based out of Turkey. So they do very creative programs with their loyalty program. So they look, first of all, what is like the normal behavior of a customer, and then they try and influence that. So they also find that, I don't know, women, for example, like to shop very frequently, but often in small amounts. So how can I kind of increase that average order value a little bit? And so a typical campaign that Mavi would run is whereby they say, okay, you can get double points on this purchase if you buy a little more than you usually do. But that number is, of course, different for every single customer, right? I might buy an average $200, and George might buy $500. So my reward will be, if you buy this time $250, you'll get double points. But for George, he might need to spend $600 to get that same reward. But it really works incredibly well. I mean, for Mavi, that has not just increased the average order value on that first transaction, but it also has doubled the number of purchases that a single customer makes, because now I kind of come back to spend those points and often spend more money than I had intended again. But that's a good example of really using both kind of propensity to buy and this kind of lifetime value calculation on a customer-by-customer basis and tailor those.
So George, there's a lot Sir Dominique said in there in regards to predictive modeling, a lot of data science on the back end. I think probably, me included in this statement, I think a lot of people probably may look at some of that stuff as almost like a black box that, can you really trust this? Like, one, do you trust it? And how do you even sort of approach that and justify to the rest of the Shaklee team, like, we're just going to let these models run with these segments and throw stuff in front of our customers, and then the revenue's going to go up, and like, how do you think about that?
Yeah, at first I kept asking for someone to explain it to me, and then I got an explanation, and I asked him to explain it again, and again, because I think at some point, when you boil it down, it's pretty much trying to take all the data you have on a customer that is doing what you want them to do, and then try to essentially see what attributes are similar and do all the regression testing. Once you say regression testing, they're ready to sort of move on and believe you. So you just pretty much do all that kind of stuff. And then they pretty much say, okay, well, let's see what the results are, right? So the only way to get really anyone to sort of believe you, within our organization at least, is to actually show, okay, when we deploy a very targeted program, conversions 3 times higher, the waste is 3 times lower, all that kind of stuff that starts to get them to believe. And I'll be completely honest with you, Kobe, I probably can't describe it very well, but I sort of believe that the magic's working just given the performance. And it's, again, we all know this, it's test, test, test.
Yep.
And don't just kind of blindly believe and assume that eventually it's going to work if it's not the first time.
Got it. What do you think about that in terms of sort of the customer sort of mindset around sort of, not really knowing and appreciating maybe some of the intelligence that's going on in some of these predictive sort of models that are behind sort of AgilOne and other sort of platforms on there? Like, how do you go about sort of marketing that value to the customer?
Right. I mean, I think ultimately it really is, and why we're really keen to always get someone to run a first campaign very quickly and just to see the results. And you can do a holdout group or some A/B testing to really, prove that it works. I mean, the general concepts are actually, they are magical, but also fairly simple to understand. I mean, when I first heard that, I don't know, Gucci can now predict, from the first handbag that I buy, like how many more handbags I will buy in the rest of my life. I have no intention to buy another Gucci handbag, but I probably will. And how do they know this? I mean, simply by comparing me, right, and all my behavior, not just that purchase, but also how often I've interacted with their emails and their website and so forth, to millions of customers who've come before me. And so that general concept is fairly intuitive to understand. Obviously, the specifics are even beyond me, but I think, we can just prove it by doing it. And I think that's really the main message for, I think, all of us. Just, get started. It's amazing the results you can get. You can almost not afford not to, get with the times and try these things.
Now, where are some areas where you maybe struggle with trying to implement a data-driven approach in your organization?
Yeah, it's funny. I was chatting with someone earlier about, it seemed like 10 years ago, marketing had all these ambitions that sort of the technology hadn't really caught up to yet. And then you fast forward, now it's like the technology is sort of outpaced sort of what marketing can even do. It's almost like now we've got this technology with AgilOne. I'll give you one example. They've got a behavioral cluster component to it. And it was like, well, we bought Agile. We're working with AgilOne. Damn it, we're going to use this module. And you start to kind of run the clusters and try to figure out, okay, look, there's customers that are more offer sensitive or customers that buy every month or whatever. And we just had a really hard time figuring out, well, what do we do with that? I mean, I think there was a portion where, okay, maybe the way we approach our customer segmentation and communications really hadn't caught up to some of those components. And you kind of hit a point where you say, you know what, I think we'll sort of table this and then, approach it, 6-9 months down the road. And not every single feature we had to sort of deploy for our organization. So we went through this discovery and exploration process and then figured, that's an important feature, but right now, given sort of the maturity we're at with our program, it can wait a bit instead of trying to just force it down our throats.
Got it. Well, you have to always crawl, walk, run, but I do feel like those behavioral clusters are really powerful ways to segment sort of customers and drive incremental sort of value. And how have you maybe seen some of the other AgilOne customers maybe sort of figure out how to approach going to the next step on behavioral? Like, how do they do that, and what kind of value do they get out of those types of data-driven campaigns?
Yeah, no, so I do believe that, you really do need to crawl, walk, run. And the nice thing about these technologies, it's not like a one-trick pony. It's not like you deploy it and you get 5% lift or 10% or 30% lift and you're done. The beautiful thing is, we have clients with us that've been with us for 5-7 years, and still every quarter they, use a new model or, cut a new segment and deploy it and get value out of it. And so specifically the behavioral clusters, one of our clients, Moose Job, by the way, totally check them out. They're awesome in many ways in their kind of combination of doing extreme creative stuff and combining it with data. But they've seen a lot of success. And so back to the kind of, some people are more discount sensitive, is the specific example George gave. So they only got to that fairly recently, which is kind of 2-3 years into it with us. But now they were able to say, well, why are we giving discounts to people who may not need discounts? And they got very granular with it and segmented their customer base into, even if someone needs a discount, how much of a discount? And they got essentially a 19% profit lift, by doing that, right? By not handing out discounts to people who might not need it. And I think that's a general theme, especially in retail. We're very kind of discount eager, but our clusters show that you probably have only 20% of people who are truly looking for deep discounts, and the other people maybe a little bit, or maybe they're looking for something totally else, like really good customer service, or like lots of selections, or whatever.
Got it. Now, Shaklee's been around, again, said 60 years, and some of these data-driven approaches, very new to you guys. But a lot, I'm sure, the core of what you guys have been able to achieve with sort of your success of business and marketing goes back to a lot of basic principles around sort of creative and driving emotion out of your customers. So how do you balance bringing this data-driven approach into your marketing organization while still not losing sort of the focus on the creative element that matters around sort of why people actually buy your products and actually stay long-term and ultimately have high LTV? How do you think about that?
If anything, it's actually helped the creative process. It's a good question, or a timely question, because we just witnessed this last week where we used to run this sort of creative treatment for a particular, one of our flagship products around kind of multivitamins, et cetera. And for the longest time, everyone just thought it was the best way to really articulate that concept. And then we did a different approach for another product and then realized it was getting much better response. And then took a completely different approach with how we market this multivitamin just the other week, and saw like a 50% change in just customer engagement. And that sort of, again, just makes more believers out of, okay, just the testing and the results and trying different things is only enhancing the creative. I don't think it's ever been received as, this is inhibiting our process or kind of, dumbing down what we're actually able to do. And if anything, it's actually enhance that whole process.
Cool, great. I know you have about a minute left here. Any questions from the audience? Microphone.
How does data science differ from advanced data science?
I don't think there's a difference. There's a spectrum. You have things that are more easier to understand and easier to implement. I don't think there's really a difference per se. Sounds like marketing mumbo jumbo.
Any other questions? No, just one back.
Could you speak about the tools and the stack that your data scientists and data engineers are using?
Is that a question for me or for AgilOne? Oh, okay. All my data scientists are over at AgilOne, so they're pretty much using AgilOne. We run a very, very, very lean team. I mean, I get kind of conceptually the benefits a lot of these predictive analytics, but we're relying on sort of the output from AgilOne to drive all of our segmentation and deployment. I mean, if you want to go into sort of under the hood in AgilOne,
No, but I think the big point to make is really that you no longer need data scientists to use data science. I mean, this is really the big revolution that's happening now. You used to, and this is not that long ago, have to have in-house data warehouse, in-house data scientists in order to use any of these models. But now, so AgilOne, again, is a cloud-based subscription solution. You can look under the hood if you want to, but for the most part, marketers just use it. It's drag and drop. They're push-button campaigns that use the data science. It's kind of your data scientist in the cloud. I mean, you really don't need that capability in-house anymore.
Cool. Well, we're getting the hook here, so thanks again. Appreciate you taking the time, and yeah, off to lunch.
Thank you.